Heat wavered in the air, distorting the darkness as flames licked up from the crumpled hood of the sedan. I skidded to a halt on the wet asphalt, my heart pounding against my ribs. A crash on this lonely stretch of highway it passed. Midnight was the last thing I expected to find on my drive home. But there it was, metal twisted around a tree, smoke billowing and someone inside. I didn't stop to think. Move. I was already sprinting off the roadside, feet slipping on rain-soaked grass as I descended, the slight embankment toward the wreck. The heat hit my face in a wave. Gasoline, sharp and nauseating, hung heavy in the air. A fire danced under the crumpled hood, growing by the second. Inside the shattered driver's side window, I saw a man slumped over the steering wheel. "Sir!" I shouted, coughing on the acrid smoke. No response. My stomach clenched. He looked unconscious, and I had no idea how long I had before the flames reached the gas tank. Every instinct from years as a paramedic screamed at me, "Get him out now!" I yanked my sleeve down over my hand and grabbed the hot door handle. It wouldn't budge. The frame was too warped from the impact. Gritting my teeth, I reached through the blown-out window instead. Glass shards bit into my forearm as I maneuvered around the deflated airbag. Inside, the man's face was partially obscured by blood and a curtain of dark hair. I pressed 2 fingers to his neck, searching for a pulse. Thump, 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 thump. Faint, but there. He was alive. Relief and adrenaline surged through me. The driver's side door was hopeless. I'd have to pull him out through the window. Flames crackled louder behind me, a reminder that time was running out. Bracing my feet, I hooked my arms under his shoulders. He was heavy, built of solid muscle from the feel of it, and pinned by the seatbelt. "Hang on, I've got you," I muttered, though he was in no state to hear it. With a grunt, I hauled him back against the seat. My fingers fumbled over his chest for the seatbelt latch. The buckle was jammed. Figures. Coughing as smoke poured from the dashboard, I gave up on the buckle and grabbed my pocket knife from my jeans. My hands were shaking, but I managed to saw through the belt strap. The instant it gave, the man's full weight sagged onto me. I staggered, nearly losing balance. He was definitely unconscious, dead weight. A glance at the flames told me I had seconds, maybe. Using every ounce of strength, I dragged him up through the window. My muscles screamed in protest as I heaved his torso out over the doorframe. His jacket caught on a twisted shard of metal, and I snarled a curse, jerking it free. "Come on, come on!" A sudden whoosh of heat at my back spurred me on. The fire had reached the interior. I could feel searing pain on my calf where a stray tongue of flame licked at me through my pants. Panic clawed at my throat, but I didn't let go. Inch by agonizing inch, I pulled the man through the window until his upper body slumped over the side of the car. From there, I hooked my arms under his armpits again and threw my weight backward. We toppled together, landing hard on the damp ground with him on top of me. The air rushed from my lungs in a painful wheeze. I didn't have the luxury of checking my bruises. A crackling roar filled my ears as the fire found something new to devour. Summoning strength I didn't know I had, I wriggled out from under the unconscious man and grabbed him by the wrists. Then I pulled, dragging him across the muddy ground as fast as I could. My eyes watered from smoke and exertion. 30 feet. That was all I managed before my body gave out, and I collapsed to my knees, gasping. Boom! The gas tank blew. A fireball erupted from the wreck with a deafening blast, illuminating the night sky in a burst of orange-red. The shockwave knocked me flat, and I threw an arm over my face as searing heat rushed over us. Debris rained down, pelting the ground around us with thuds and clangs. For one terrifying moment, I just lay there, ears ringing, heart hammering out of control. Groaning, I forced myself up and immediately crawled to the man's side. He was still there, lying motionless where I'd dragged him, mercifully clear of the worst of the explosion. A piece of metal, part of the trunk, had landed a few feet away, flames flickering along its edge. We needed to move farther in case something else blew. "Let's go," I panted, not sure if I was talking to him or myself. My limbs trembled as I got my arms under his again, half lifting, half dragging him another several yards until we were behind a fallen log at the tree line. I eased him down as gently as I could. The adrenaline was ebbing, and with it, the illusion of invincibility. Pain was making itself known. A stinging in my forearm, probably cut from the glass, a throbbing burn on my left calf, and a dozen smaller aches. But nothing felt broken or too serious on me. Small miracles. The man, though, I quickly assessed as best I could in near darkness. The burning wreck provided some light, but it was spotty and jerking with shadows. I grabbed my phone from my pocket and turned on the flashlight, propping it up on the ground. Pale light fell over him and I sucked in a breath. He looked about my age, early 30s maybe. His face was smeared with blood and soot, a gash on his temple still oozing. Expensive suit, or what remained of it, charred at the edges and soaked with rain and mud. There was blood on his shirt too, dark and spreading from somewhere on his torso. I gently ran my hands over him, checking for injuries as I'd done countless times in the field. A warm stickiness met my fingers on his left side. Lifting the singed dress shirt, I found the source. A deep laceration along his ribs, with something small and metallic glinting inside. My stomach lurched. Is that a bullet? Lightning flashed overhead, followed by a rumble of thunder. The storm was about to break in earnest. We needed to get out of here, but I hesitated, torn. This man needed a hospital immediately. He might have internal injuries from the crash, and he was definitely losing blood from what looked like a gunshot wound. My training screamed at me to call 911. I wiped rain from my eyes and looked back up the road, expecting to see headlights of some other driver who might have stopped. There was nothing, just the darkness and the glow of the burning car. The reality sank in. I was utterly alone out here except for him. No one had come, not yet. Maybe no one would. This highway was practically abandoned at this hour. My fingers hovered over my phone, the emergency call screen glowing. We needed an ambulance, police, someone. But then I thought of the bullet. This wasn't a normal car accident. Someone had shot him. Questions swirled in my smoke-addled brain. Was it a drive-by? A robbery? Something told me it was more. The suit. The fact he was driving out here at night. The way his car looked deliberately run off the road. If whoever did this to him was still out there, calling the authorities might bring even more trouble. What if they were watching, waiting to finish the job? What if they had police in their pocket? It sounded paranoid. Maybe I'd inhaled too much. Smoke, but I'd seen enough of the darker side of the city during my years responding to 911 calls. Sometimes calling for help could make things worse, especially if the victim was involved in something illegal. Thunder boomed, closer this time. I made my decision. No sirens. Not yet, at least. The man had begged for help when I first reached the window. I recalled a faint groan. Maybe a word. But he hadn't said anything about calling 911. If he woke up, I could ask him what he wanted to do. For now, I'd do my best on my own. I jogged to my car, which I'd left idling askew on the shoulder with the driver door open. Grabbing the large first aid kit from my trunk, I threw it open next to the man back at the tree line. The rain finally began to pour in sheets, hissing against the still blazing wreck a short distance away. At least that might keep the fire from spreading further into the dry brush. I snapped on a pair of latex gloves from my kit, my hands miraculously steady now that I had a task. The bullet wound was oozing steadily. I tore open a packet of gauze and pressed it firmly to the wound, eliciting a low moan from the unconscious man. His jaw tensed, but his eyes remained shut. Good. A pain response. That was actually reassuring. He wasn't dead to the world. It's okay. You're safe now, I murmured, not entirely sure if that was true. I'm just patching you up enough so I can move you. Another groan, softer this time. I risked a quick glance at his face. Even battered and bloodied, his features were strong, refined, cheekbones that stood out sharply under smudges of dirt. An aquiline nose, dark brows drawn tight in pain. Something about him felt important. He had that aura, even unconscious. Or maybe I was just projecting because I wanted so badly for him to survive. As the rain plastered my hair to my face, I worked with practiced efficiency. Gauze, pressure, bandage wrap around his middle to hold it in place. I didn't dare dig for the bullet here. That was a job for an ER, and I wasn't about to play trauma surgeon on the forest floor. I just needed to slow the bleeding. I cleaned the head wound on his temple as best I could and stuck a large bandage over it. Every so often he made a noise, halfway between a grunt and a word. It sounded like he was trying to say something, but I couldn't make it out. Finally, I had him as stable as I was going to get in the field. My car was up on the road. I'd have to haul him up there somehow. The idea of lifting this guy, who probably weighed a good 190 pounds of solid muscle, up the embankment made my stomach quail. Maybe I had a spine board in the trunk, or a blanket to use as a drag. I stood and the world tilted a moment, a wave of dizziness threatening to buckle my knees. I realized I was breathing too fast, half panicked at the enormity of what came next. One step at a time, Nat. My old mentor's voice echoed in my head, using the nickname only he ever did. I forced myself to inhale deeply, count to 4. Exhale. It cleared the fuzziness. I could do this. I had to. After fetching a folded emergency blanket from my kit, I spread it next to him and, with considerable effort, rolled him onto it. He was out cold again, barely stirring as I maneuvered him. The blanket would slide easier over the wet ground than just dragging his body, taking hold of the improvised sled. I began the arduous task of pulling him up the hill. Rain soaked through my clothes completely, and mud streaked my jeans as I dug in my heels and leaned into each pull. My breath sawed in and out. He shifted and let out a low choking sound that alarmed me. I paused, worried he might be aspirating or struggling to breathe. But a second later it turned into a ragged breath, just unconscious, not dying right this second. Okay. It felt like an eternity. But finally the slope evened out. I could see my car's headlights cutting white beams through the rain ahead. Another few yards. Muscles burning, I gave a final heave and dragged both the man and myself onto the pavement next to my idling Honda Civic. I collapsed against the rear bumper, chest heaving. That was officially the hardest rescue I'd ever done alone. My EMT colleagues would have been impressed, or maybe horrified at my stupidity for taking it on solo. The man still lay motionless on the blanket, rain washing over his battered form. At least the bleeding from his side seemed controlled for now. The bandages were sodden with red, but not as much new blood as I'd feared. We needed to get out of here now. The fire had calmed to a dull roar behind us as the rain did its work. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't safe. Whoever shot him could be nearby, or could come back looking to confirm the kill. The thought made me shudder. With great difficulty, I managed to wrestle him into the backseat of my car. Thank God for whoever invented the squat lift. I used my legs, not my aching back, to get him halfway up, then sort of rolled or pushed until he was lying across the back. It wasn't graceful, and I muttered an apology as his head bumped the door frame. He was too out of it to notice. I yanked the blanket out from under him and tossed it aside, then quickly covered him with a dry spare jacket from my back seat. His boots dangled awkwardly over the edge of the seat, so I maneuvered him enough to bend his legs in. In the glow from the interior light, I noticed for the first time a black handgun on the floor of the back seat, likely fallen from his jacket. Holster when I'd dragged him. I gingerly picked it up, heart thudding, and engaged the safety with trembling fingers before tucking it under the seat. The fact that he was armed wasn't a surprise at this point, but it drove home my uneasy suspicions. "Who are you?" I wondered silently. No average guy drives around with a pistol and gets ambushed on deserted roads. As I slid into the driver's seat, a crack of lightning illuminated the shattered wreck in the distance. Sirens wailed, faint but approaching. Maybe someone a few miles back had seen the fireball and called it in. If that was an ambulance or the fire department, they'd find the wreck and wonder where the driver was. I couldn't deal with that now. I needed to disappear before they arrived. I hit the gas, pulling back onto the highway. My hands were shaking so badly I had to choke up on the steering wheel to steady them. "Just breathe," I whispered to myself, peering at the rear-view mirror. The rain on the glass and my adrenaline-fueled tunnel vision made everything beyond my headlights a blur. We drove in darkness for a few tense minutes, but no headlights appeared behind us. No one followed. Only when I was a safe distance away did I allow a sob of relief to escape my throat. I blinked away a sudden sting of tears. "Keep it together." I wasn't done yet, not even close. "Where?" A rough voice croaked from the back seat, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. I caught a glimpse of movement in the mirror. The man was stirring, one arm shifting as if trying to push himself up. "Don't try to move," I said, quickly modulating my tone to something calm yet firm. The voice I used on frightened patients. "You're hurt. Just lie still, okay?" His exhale was harsh and labored. "Car," he rasped. Even through that single word, I heard an accent. Something European? Italian, maybe? It was too faint to place. "Your car crashed," I explained gently. I kept my eyes flicking between him and the winding road ahead, slowing a little in case he freaked out. There was an explosion. "I pulled you out. We're in my car now. I'm taking you somewhere safe." For a second, only the sound of the rain and the windshield wipers answered. I wondered if he'd passed out again. Then came 2 words, spoken so softly I almost missed them under his breath. "No, police." I let out the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Okay, no police, I promise." I tried to meet his gaze in the mirror, but the darkness and his position made it impossible. "We're going to my place, all right? It's not far. I'll take care of you until we figure out what to do. A low sound, maybe of assent or just pain. It was hard to tell, but he didn't argue further. In fact, he went quiet again, and when I glanced back at the next stop sign, his eyes were closed. His breathing sounded shallow but steady enough for now. Shock, blood loss. He was in bad shape, but alive. I wiped my soaked face on my sleeve and focused on the road. Questions would have to wait. Whoever this man was, whatever trouble he was in, I had stepped irrevocably into it by saving him. And something told me that trouble was only just beginning. The rain was easing to a drizzle by the time I pulled into my driveway. My little house sat dark and silent, a lone porch light guiding me in. It took every bit of strength and finesse. I had left to get my mysterious patient out of the car and into my home. He roused only once, a pained groan, as I slung his arm over my shoulders and half carried, half dragged him inside. I murmured soothing nonsense, the way I'd calm any injured person. Almost there. I've got you. He leaned on me unconsciously, his head lolling against my neck as we staggered through my front door. By the time I eased him down onto my living room couch, I was shaking from exhaustion. My clothes were soaked and filthy, dripping rainwater and mud onto the hardwood floor. But that was the least of my concerns. I flicked on a lamp, casting a warm glow that let me properly see the man I'd rescued for the first time. He was a mess, no surprise, but under the blood and grime, I could now make out the strong line of his jaw, the slope of cheekbones that gave his face a sculpted elegance even in ruin. His hair was dark and thick, plastered to his forehead. The makeshift bandage on his temple had slipped a bit, and dried blood streaked down to a faint stubble on his chin. Despite the cuts and bruises, he was, well, disconcertingly handsome. Not that it mattered. I mentally slapped myself for even registering that fact right now. He didn't stir as I fetched more supplies and set about, cleaning and properly dressing his wounds. I peeled off his ruined jacket and blood-soaked dress shirt, trying not to jostle him more than necessary. Underneath, his body was all corded muscle and old scars, a testament to a life hard-lived. A jagged white line across his right bicep, another round scar low on his abdomen that suspiciously looked like a bullet wound from long ago, and a black tattoo over his left rib cage, partially disappearing under the bandages I'd wrapped. The tattoo looked like words in a foreign language. Latin, maybe. I'd have to get closer to read it, but I wasn't about to pry. What drew my attention more urgently was the fresh bullet lodged in his side. My bandaging in the field had slowed the bleeding, but it was nowhere near what a proper hospital could do. I chewed my lip, contemplating. Removing a bullet was risky, and not something I should attempt on my couch. But leaving it in risked infection, not to mention continued internal bleeding. For now, I reinforced the pressure bandages and hoped for the best, at least until I could figure out a safer plan. His other injuries were easier, cuts cleaned and disinfected. The gash on his temple closed with butterfly strips, bruises iced. He had a dislocated little finger on his left hand, which I gently popped back into place with a soft click. He didn't even flinch, just kept breathing shallowly, eyes closed. Shock and blood loss had him deep under. I draped a blanket over him to keep him warm and stepped back to catch my breath. My living room looked like a war-zone medical bay, supplies scattered across the coffee table and floor, and on the couch lay a stranger who was probably some kind of criminal. I glanced at the gun I'd taken off him, now unloaded and tucked away in a drawer across the room. My gaze then fell on the heap of wet, bloody clothing I'd peeled off him. I hesitated, then picked through the pockets of his jacket, seeking any ID. A wallet emerged. Leather and monogrammed with LR inside. I found a driver's license under the plastic sleeve. I pulled it out, holding it to the light. There he was, cleaned up and stern-looking in the photo. The name read Luca Romano, age 34. I didn't recognize it, but something about it prickled the back of my mind. Was he someone I should know? A local politician? Businessman? My fingers flipped through a couple of credit cards. A black card that only the ultra-rich carried. Some cash. Who even carried 100 bills in quantity these days? And oddly, a metal card the size of a business card, etched with a symbol of a coiled serpent. Definitely not your average Joe. There was also a phone in the pile of belongings, but it was a lost cause. Screen shattered and the casing bent from the crash, likely waterlogged to boot. I set the wallet aside, unease growing. I had confirmation of his identity, but it didn't really tell me who he was, or why someone had tried to kill him. Exhaustion pulled at me hard. I'd been running on adrenaline for hours. Those sirens earlier, had they found his car? Would the cops be searching for a body that wasn't there? Would they somehow trace things to me? Anxiety gnawed at my insides. One thing at a time. I peeled off my own soggy, smoky clothes and changed into dry sweatpants and a hoodie, cleaning my minor cuts and the burn on my calf with antiseptic. I caught a glimpse of myself in the bathroom mirror. Wild-eyed, hair hanging in damp clumps, soot streaks across my cheeks like some action movie extra. What the hell have you gotten yourself into, Natalie? I hardly recognized the woman staring back. Shaking it off, I returned to check on my patient. Luca was deathly pale against the pillow I'd propped under his head, but when I placed a hand on his cheek, his skin felt a touch too warm. Fever. Not. Surprising given the trauma and possible infection starting. I fetched some acetaminophen and carefully managed to get 2 tablets dissolved in water down his throat. It wasn't easy, he was barely responsive, and I had to support his head and dribble the liquid in slowly, hoping he wouldn't choke. He grimaced but swallowed, which I took as a good sign. Lightning flashed faintly outside, the storm finally moving off. In the silence that followed, broken only by the ticking of my living room clock and his ragged breathing, I suddenly felt the full weight of the situation. There was a man on my couch who'd been shot and nearly blown up, a man with armed enemies most likely, and I had just invited all that trouble right through my front door. I sank onto the floor beside the couch, wrapping my arms around my drawn-up knees. My head knew I should call the police, consequences be damned, but my gut rebelled at that idea. He had begged me not to, and in truth, part of me feared what would happen if I did involve the authorities. Maybe it was the raw memory of my father, who'd been an honest cop, getting gunned down by gang members years ago. Justice hadn't brought him back, hadn't protected us. The system had huge cracks that people like my dad fell through, and people like this man, lying bruised and broken in front of me. What category did he fall into? Victim? Criminal? Both? I rubbed my tired eyes. No answers right now. I'd keep him alive through the night, and in the morning, maybe he could tell me who I was risking my neck for. With a sigh, I grabbed an old quilt and a pillow and made myself a spot on the floor next to the couch. I wasn't about to leave him unattended. If he woke up disoriented or tried to move, I needed to be there. My eyelids were heavy and the adrenaline crash made my limbs leaden. Just a short rest, I promised myself. I'll keep an ear open. When I woke, the shadows in the room indicated late afternoon. I stopped up, catching my breath. For a moment, I wondered if I'd imagined the noise that woke me. Then I heard it, a low moan. I twisted around. Luca's face was contorted in pain, his head tossing on the pillow. No, he mumbled, brow pinched. Basta no. The word was foreign, but I caught the meaning. Stop or enough in Italian. He was dreaming or remembering something unpleasant. Hey, I said softly, reaching to gently touch his shoulder. His skin was still a bit too warm. It's okay. You're safe. His eyes flew open at my touch. For one tense second, I found myself pinned by a disoriented, ice-gray stare. His irises were an arresting shade of pale steel blue, and they fixed on me with raw fear and fury combined. I barely had time to register the intensity before he tried to lurch up. No, lie down, I urged, pressing lightly on his uninjured shoulder. He was surprisingly strong, even half delirious. His body fought mine with instinctual resistance. A strangled sound came from him as he realized he couldn't fully rise. Easy, you're hurt. Please, you have to stay still or you'll start bleeding again. He blinked, some awareness creeping back into his expression. His gaze darted around, taking in the unfamiliar room, the bandages on his torso. He grimaced and sank back, breathing hard. The car, he rasped, voice cracked and weak. I offered a small smile. It exploded. But you're out of it. You're safe now. In my house. I noticed my hand was still on his shoulder and quickly withdrew it. Suddenly self-conscious. I'm Natalie. I'm the one who pulled you out and patched you up as best I could. He closed his eyes briefly. Natalie, he repeated, the syllables rolling off his tongue with that accent, softer now. I remember you. His brow furrowed as if searching his memory. I thought I was burning. Then an angel dragged me out. My cheeks heated, and I looked away to hide a flustered laugh. Hardly an angel. And you were damn heavy. For the record. A ghost of a smile tugged at one corner of his mouth, but it was fleeting. Almost immediately his face hardened again, eyes sharpening. Anyone else here? The question was tight, wary. Even wounded, there was a commanding edge in his tone. I shook my head. No. Just me. I hesitated, then added, "No one else knows you're here. I didn't call the police or an ambulance. Like you asked." His head turned slightly toward me, those steely eyes studying me with an intensity that made me fight the urge to squirm. He seemed to be evaluating if he could trust me. Finally, he gave a small nod. "Thank you." The words were quiet but sincere. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Do you want some water? Or pain meds? I have a few supplies here." He swallowed, as if just realizing how parched he was, and gave another faint nod. Carefully, I lifted his head and brought a glass of water to his lips. He drank a few swallows before coughing. I eased him back down. Even that small effort left him grimacing, one hand drifting weakly toward his bandaged side. His fingers were long and surprisingly elegant for a man, clearly accustomed to violence. I noticed they were stained with dried blood. Maybe someone else's. From before the crash, I gently took his hand and wiped it clean with a wet cloth. He watched me in silence until I was done, and I couldn't decipher the look in his eyes. "You were shot," I explained softly, deciding to fill the silence. "The bullet's still in there. I managed to slow the bleeding, but you need real medical help. A surgeon." He closed his eyes again, jaw clenching. "No hospitals," he ground out. I figured that would be his stance. "Then at least a doctor who can be discreet? I know someone, maybe, from my paramedic days who sometimes treats people off the books." I trailed off. It had been a while since I'd talked to Dr. Lee, but maybe he would help. Although if this man was a criminal, I wasn't sure I wanted to involve others. Luca's breathing had evened out a bit. He opened his eyes and they seemed a little less glazed. "It will be handled." "My people," he started, then winced sharply and shut his mouth. "Your people, of course." He likely had underlings or accomplices out there looking for him. Suddenly I wondered if those people would be friendly to me or not. They might assume I hurt him or was holding him hostage. The thought made me uneasy. As if sensing my change in mood, he shifted his focus to me again. "You saved my life." It wasn't quite a question. More like he was confirming it for himself. I offered a small shrug. "I guess I did." My attempt at a light tone faltered. Honestly, I'm still not sure why or how. But, yeah. His lips parted as if he was about to say something more. But then a flash of headlights swept across my front window, drawing both our attention. I glanced at the clock. Barely 6 a.m. Who would be? A dark vehicle rolled to a stop on the street just outside my house. Not just dark, black with tinted windows. It was a van or SUV of some kind, engine quietly idling. Every hair on my arm rose in warning. Luca reacted instantly. Despite his injuries, he tried again to sit up. This time succeeding halfway before a bolt of agony made him curse under his breath. He fixed a ferocious look on me. "Are your doors locked?" he asked urgently. "Yes. I always kept them locked." Outside, the van's driver's side door opened. I saw 1, 2, 3 figures emerge, all dressed in black. They were coming straight toward my front door. Panic seized me. "Who are they?" "Help," he said through clenched teeth. "Mine." He took a shuddering breath. "But be careful." I wasn't sure what he meant by that, but I had no time to ask. A heavy knock fell on my front door, making me jump. Through the frosted glass pane, I could see the silhouette of a large man. Another was pacing near the van, and I swore I caught the glint of a weapon in his hands. My mouth went dry. This could just as easily be the people who tried to kill him, showing up to finish the job. How could he be sure these were his people? My heart thudding, I hurried to the side table and retrieved the gun I'd hidden. Checking the safety was still on. I wasn't skilled with guns. My dad had taught me basics when I was younger, but I'd never actually shot a person. Still, holding it gave me a tiny sense of control. I kept it lowered at my side as I inched toward the door. "Natalie!" Luca called from the couch, alarm clear in his voice. He was struggling to get up, but I saw blood starting to seep through his bandages. "Don't open," he panted. Too late. Another series of thuds rattled the door, more insistent. A deep male voice from outside. "Mr. Romano? Are you in there?" They knew his name. My eyes widened. Friend or foe, they at least were looking for him specifically. Steeling myself, I pressed up to the door. "Who is it?" I shouted, trying to keep my voice from shaking. The reply was curt. "Open up. We're here for Mr. Romano. We know he's inside. We tracked his phone." A pause. "And we mean no harm to whoever is aiding him." I glanced back at Luca. who was watching with a mixture of pain and urgency. His breath was labored, but he managed a single nod. "Let them in." I decided to trust him, sliding the gun into the back waistband of my pants. I unlocked the deadbolt and cracked the door. Immediately, a broad shoulder forced it the rest of the way, and I found myself face to face with a mountain of a man in a black coat. I stumbled back and he stepped in, followed by a second man, while the third remained just outside, scanning the street. Both intruders were huge, stern-faced, and armed. I caught sight of holstered pistols under their coats. Everything about them screamed dangerous. My heart thundered in my chest. The first man's gaze swept the room and landed on Luca laid out on the couch. His hard expression flashed with relief. "Boss," he said breathlessly, rushing over. The second man stayed by me, effectively cutting off any escape or sudden moves. Not that I intended any. My hands were raised slightly in surrender. Luca relaxed visibly, though his face was ashen with pain. "Enzo," he greeted the first man in a strained voice. "Took you long enough." Enzo bowed his head, looking almost ashamed. "Traffic, sir, and the storm. We came as fast as we could once Marco gave us the location." He knelt by the couch to inspect Luca's condition, and I found myself blurting out, "Careful! He's still bleeding. He needs a hospital." Enzo's head whipped toward me as if truly noticing me for the first time. His eyes narrowed behind dark sunglasses. Who wears sunglasses at dawn? And I caught the protective menace in them. "Who is this?" he demanded. "What happened?" Luca lifted a hand weakly. "Stand down. This is Natalie. She saved my life." His voice hardened just a fraction. "She's under my protection." Enzo immediately backed off a step, though he still looked wary. The second man, a bald, bearded hulk, finally moved from the doorway and approached, addressing Luca in a thick accent I couldn't place. "We should move you, Capo. It's not secure here." He barely spared me a glance, but I felt his presence, looming like a threat. Capo. The word rang a bell from mob movies, boss. My stomach dropped. Who exactly had I pulled from that car? I was starting to have a very dangerous inkling. Luca grimaced as he tried to push himself upright. "Agreed. But..." He looked at me, an unspoken question in his eyes. Would I come with them? Or maybe, could I manage on my own if they left me here? He had promised I was under his protection, which implied I might need protecting now. I thought of whoever had tried to kill him. If they knew he was alive, they'd come for him again. And maybe for any witness, like me. I blew out a breath, making my decision on instinct. "I'm coming too if you need me," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt, at least until he's stable. Part of me also wanted answers. Who he really was. What I'd gotten myself into, but one step at a time. Enzo looked like he might object, but Luca cut him off. "Help me up," he ordered. Between Enzo and the other guy, they lifted Luca carefully. He stifled a groan, going frighteningly pale as his feet hit the floor. I dashed to his side, on the side of his injury, in case he needed support. He stood taller than I'd realized, even slumped and leaning on his men. At about 5'4", I felt positively dwarfed by him and the other hulks. He took a labored breath, then nodded to me appreciatively for being there. "Let's go," he said. The men half-carried him toward the door. I grabbed a smaller kit of medical supplies and my car keys from the table, then hesitated, looking at my blood-stained living room. Would I even be coming back here? The thought gave me a pang. But I hurried after them, locking the door behind me. The morning air was chilly and smelled of rain. They had parked a black van right in my driveway now. The back doors were already open. Inside, I glimpsed a fourth person, a wary-eyed older man with a medical bag, looking prepared to administer aid. Oh, thank God, they brought a doctor. Maybe I wouldn't have to play field surgeon after all. Enzo and the others eased Luca into the van. I hovered at the edge of the driveway, uncertain for the first time if I was truly welcome. But Luca, despite clearly fighting waves of agony, turned toward me and extended a hand. "Natalie, come." His voice brooked no argument, but beneath it I heard something almost pleading, as if he genuinely didn't want to leave me behind. I swallowed and reached for his hand, climbing into the van. The door slammed shut behind me, sealing us in with these dangerous strangers as we sped off to God knows where. My quiet life had just been thoroughly upended, and there was no going back now. The van ride passed in tense silence but frantic activity. The older man, I assumed to be a doctor immediately, set to work on Luca under the van's interior light. I hovered at Luca's side, doing whatever small things I could, holding gauze, checking his pulse, while the van sped through the city streets. I caught glimpses out the front windshield. We bypassed downtown and headed toward the outskirts again, likely to avoid any police checkpoints, I realized. The doctor introduced himself curtly as Dr. Sullivan, and seemed more than familiar with gunshot wounds. He gave Luca a shot of something for pain, then inspected my handiwork with a critical eye. "Not bad," he grunted to me, "for a field job." He then glanced at Luca's face. "Boss, I'm going to remove the bullet now." "It'll hurt." Luca, who was barely conscious again, gave a faint nod and clenched his teeth. Without thinking, I reached down and took his hand in mine. His fingers wrapped around mine in a surprisingly tight grip as the doctor probed the wound. Even with the pain meds, Luca tensed, a low growl escaping him as the forceps dug in. I winced in sympathy, murmuring, "It's okay. Just a bit more." Not sure if I was reassuring him or myself. Finally, with a wet squelch, Dr. Sullivan extracted a small, misshapen slug. Blood welled anew, and I hurried to swab it away as the doctor began irrigating and stitching. Luca's grip on my hand loosened as the worst of the ordeal passed. I realized only then that he'd nearly crushed my fingers, but I didn't pull away. By the time the van rolled to a stop, the immediate crisis was over. The doctor had patched Luca up properly, fresh stitches, clean bandages, and a hefty dose of antibiotics, and fluids via an IV drip he set up from a hook on the van wall. Luca had drifted into a sedated sleep, his head lolling against the van's interior. I gently disengaged my hand from his, which left him looking oddly vulnerable. It struck me how different he seemed from the imposing figure who had first woken up in my house. Like this, he was just a man, injured, exhausted. It stirred a protective feeling in my chest. Enzo slid open the van door. We were in a covered garage of some kind, likely attached to a house. The two other men from earlier hopped out and quickly scanned the surroundings before giving a nod. Clear. Together, they carefully lifted Luca out on a stretcher that had been prepared. I scrambled out after them, squinting in the brighter light. We were indeed in a garage, next to a couple of high-end vehicles. Enzo noticed me trailing and jerked his chin toward a side door. "This way, miss." I followed, clutching my little medical kit to my chest like a security blanket. We entered what looked like a grand foyer of a house. No, a mansion. Marble floors, tasteful but expensive decor, and hallways that stretched into elegant rooms. It was the kind of home only the ultra-wealthy could afford, tucked away behind gates and long driveways to keep out prying eyes. The realization that I was now deep inside a mob boss's lair sent a shiver through me. A woman in a crisp black dress appeared from a side door, her eyes widening at the sight of Luca on the stretcher. "Dio mio, what happened?" she gasped, switching to Italian in her panic. She looked to be in her 50s, with graying hair pulled into a bun. "He'll live, Sophia," Enzo said brusquely, continuing past her. "Where's Marco and the others?" "In the study, trying to find out what went wrong," she replied, then immediately moved to my side, surprising me by taking my arm gently. "Come, dear, you are soaked and shivering. Let the men handle this." I realized then that I was, in fact, trembling, whether from adrenaline or the chill of my clothes, I wasn't sure. My teeth threatened to chatter. Looking down, I saw I was still in the same hoodie and sweatpants, now smeared with Luca's blood from the van. Everything felt surreal. Part of me balked at leaving Luca's side, but the woman tugged me along with a maternal firmness I couldn't resist. I watched over my shoulder as the men carried him up a grand staircase. Dr. Sullivan barking orders to get a room ready. Luca didn't stir. Sophia guided me to a bathroom on the ground floor. "You wash up. I'll fetch you some fresh clothes," she said kindly. In a daze, I obeyed, stepping into a luxurious marble bathroom that smelled of lavender. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, pale, smeared with blood, again, hair a tangled mess. For the second time in less than 12 hours, I barely recognized myself. The hot shower she insisted I take was heaven, and I let the water scald away the grime and stress until my skin was pink. True to her word, Sophia left a stack of folded clothes on a stool. A simple gray sweater and black leggings, probably hers or a staff member's, but they were clean and blessedly warm. Dressed and feeling somewhat human again, I ventured out. I found Sophia waiting with a steaming mug of tea. She pressed it into my hands. "Drink, Kara. It will help." I sipped obediently. Chamomile, sweetened with honey. My frazzled nerves loosened a fraction. "Thank you for being so kind," I murmured. She gave a gentle smile. "We owe you thanks. You saved Mr. Romano. Many would not have done what you did." My cheeks warmed at the praise. "It was the right thing to do," I said softly. Then, unable to contain my curiosity, I ventured, He is your boss?" Sophia's expression became carefully neutral. "I am the housekeeper here. I've known Luca since he was a boy. He's a good man, even if he lives a difficult life." Her eyes searched mine. "Do you know who he is, dear?" I swallowed. "I'm beginning to piece it together. I think," I lowered my voice, as if saying it aloud might make it too real. "On the road, one of his men called him Capo. And you all carry guns like it's normal. I'm not stupid. He's involved in something criminal, isn't he? Like organized crime." It felt absurd to say it so plainly. Sophia sighed, taking my empty cup. "That is for Luca to discuss with you when he's able. Just know that you're safe here. No harm will come to you under this roof. Safe. Under this roof with dangerous men." I wasn't sure safe was the right word, but I believed she at least meant it. The fact that these people were treating me as a guest, rather than a hostage, was encouraging. Perhaps Luca's endorsement of me, saying I was under his protection, truly meant something to them. My exhaustion was returning in waves. Sophia directed me to a guest bedroom not far from where, I gathered, they had taken Luca. "Try to rest. I'll come get you when he wakes," she said. Too tired to protest, I sank into the plush bed and was asleep within minutes. Despite the unfamiliar surroundings, when I woke, the shadows in the room indicated late afternoon. I startled, disoriented for a moment by the ornate bedroom. Then it all came flooding back. The car crash, Luca, this mansion. God, it felt like I'd been dropped into a crime drama, and I half expected to find it was all a dream. But the faint ache of the burn on my calf and the bandaged cut on my arm were very real. I quickly swung my legs out of bed and padded into the hallway. I wasn't sure if I was free to roam, but no one stopped me. From a distant room, I heard low voices, men conversing in both English and Italian. I followed the sound to a partially open door. Inside, I glimpsed a stately study lined with books. Luca's men, Enzo, the bald guy, and a couple of others, were gathered around a desk, where a younger man with sleek hair was typing on a laptop. Perhaps this was Marco. They looked tense. I caught fragments, traced the payment. Definitely Petrov's men and someone. Had to tip them off about his route, Petrov. The name sent a chill through me. It sounded Eastern European. Arrival, and tip them off. Did that mean someone on the inside betrayed Luca? The floor creaked under my foot, and instantly, 4 sets of eyes snapped to the doorway. My heart jumped into my throat as Enzo moved, hand going toward his holster. But Marco, the tech-looking one, recognized me and touched Enzo's arm. "That's the girl, Natalie." Enzo exhaled and removed his hand from the gun, giving me a curt nod. "Miss Natalie, you should be resting." "I'm fine," I said quickly. I just wanted to see if Mr. Romano is awake." I stumbled over what to call him. Calling a mob boss by first name felt oddly intimate, but Mr. Romano felt too formal considering I had literally dragged him out of a burning car. Enzo's stern face softened just a little. "He's still resting. Doctor gave him a sedative to keep him under while we handle some issues, like trying to figure out who shot him and why." I bit my lip, debating whether I should offer to help or keep my head down. Before I could decide, the bald man, I recalled his name was Diego from earlier conversation, spoke up, voice gravelly. "When the boss wakes, we'll have questions. You being there at the right time, it's one hell of a coincidence." His tone held a hint of suspicion. My spine stiffened. "You think I had something to do with his crash?" Outrage and a touch of hurt flared in me. "I was driving home and I found him. That's all. I have nothing to do with whatever your world is." Diego shrugged, unapologetic. Maybe, maybe not. Petrov's people have used decoys before. Women, innocents to lure. "Enough," Enzo said sharply, shooting Diego a warning look. "She saved him, risked her life. Show some respect." Diego grunted and looked away, but I could tell his doubt remained. It stung, but I understood his paranoia. They were clearly dealing with betrayal from within. It made sense they'd eye the unknown outsider warily. Marco cleared his throat. "Miss, would you mind if I ask, did you see or hear anything at the crash site?" Any vehicle that might have been following him? Any faces? I shook my head. No, nothing. By the time I got there, just his car and the flames. And, well, he was shot, so whoever did it probably was there before, but I didn't see anyone. Marco nodded, not looking surprised. Enzo rubbed a hand over his face. Fatigue evident now that I was paying attention. Some of these men might not have slept all night either, searching for their boss and dealing with crises. Despite myself, I felt a flicker of empathy. They cared about Luca. Whatever else they were, there was loyalty here. Well, except for the possible mole they were discussing. Before the silence grew too awkward, Sophia appeared behind me with impeccable timing. Natalie, dear, he's waking. I instantly forgot the tension and followed her out, my heart fluttering in anticipation. She led me to a spacious bedroom down the hall. The door was open. Inside, I found Luca propped up on a bed that looked like it belonged in a 5-star hotel, a tuft of pillows behind him. The curtains were drawn, letting in the late-day sun. Dr. Sullivan was packing up some equipment into a case. He gave me a brief nod as I entered. Luca's gaze was on the doctor, but as soon as I stepped in, his eyes shifted to me. Our eyes met, and an unexpected warmth bloomed in my chest. He was awake, pale and exhausted-looking, but awake and alive. The relief was intense. "Hello," I said softly, approaching the bedside. "You're looking a lot better than before." A faint smile touched his lips. "I must be if you're still here." His voice was a low rasp, but had a hint of its dry humor. I realized I was smiling too and quickly tempered it, acutely aware of the others around. Dr. Sullivan cleared his throat. "He'll pull through as long as he takes it easy. No strenuous activity, keep the wound clean. I'll check on him each day until he's out of the woods." His tone was authoritative. It struck me that he probably was on retainer for these sorts of situations. Luca gave a minimal nod. "Grazie, dottore." The doctor snapped his case shut and headed out. Sophia hovered a moment, her gaze flitting between Luca and me with a knowing light. Then she excused herself as well. Suddenly we were alone. I sank into the chair by his bed. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I wasn't sure where to start. Now that he was lucid, a million questions jostled in my mind, but they all tangled up on my tongue. He broke the silence first. "I hear you had a busy morning saving my life again." I blinked. "Hardly. It was Dr. Sullivan who... He told me how you never left my side in the van." Luca's eyes softened. "And that you were the one who got me out of the car. Kept me alive through the night. I owe you, Natalie, more than I can ever repay." Heat crept to my cheeks. Hearing him talk about it directly was strangely overwhelming. "You don't owe me. I just did what anyone with a conscience would do." A shadow passed over his face. Not anyone. Many would have called the authorities and left me to their mercies. Or worse, ignored the wreck. Entirely. His jaw tightened, as if considering that grim possibility. "You have a brave heart." For a second, I forgot what he likely was. My chest tightened at his earnest praise. "I think adrenaline and my EMT training took over," I said, trying to make light of it. By the time I realized how crazy it was too late. He studied me quietly. "Crazy or not, you saved me. Thank you." His voice was rougher on the last 2 words, and I saw genuine emotion in his eyes. Gratitude, yes, but something else too. Respect? Admiration? It made me feel oddly shy. I glanced down at my hands. "How are you feeling now?" I asked, changing the subject a bit. He exhaled. "Like I got shot and hit by a truck. But aside from that, well enough." A ghost of a smirk. "Sullivan pumped me with enough drugs that I can't complain." I gave a little laugh. "Good. You need rest." On impulse, I reached out to adjust his pillow that was slipping. He leaned slightly into my hands as I did so, his eyes never leaving my face. My pulse skipped. There was an intimacy in this simple act that took me by surprise. When I settled back, he tilted his head. "They are treating you all right?" "Oh, yes. Everyone's been kind, mostly." I omitted Diego's gruff accusations. No need to trouble him with that. "Sophia is a gem. She fed me and made me sleep." Luca's lips curved more. "She practically raised me. I'm not surprised." So Sophia had a deep history with him. Perhaps she was more family than employee. Another question bubbled up then. "Your men?" They mentioned someone named Petrov, and that someone tipped them off. "Does that mean someone on the inside betrayed you?" His expression shuddered a bit. Clearly, shop talk wasn't something he wanted to burden me with. "It's being investigated," he said carefully. "Petrov is an adversary, but we'll handle it. I won't let anyone hurt you for what you've done. You have my word." The intensity in that last bit was unmistakable. I believed him. He would probably do whatever it took to ensure my safety now. But I also realized something crucial. My life was in danger simply because I saved him. If Petrov's people knew someone helped Luka survive, they might try to eliminate me as a loose end. The idea made my blood run cold. I cleared my throat. "Speaking of that, what exactly happens now? I mean, am I a prisoner here? Protective custody? Should I be calling a lawyer or something?" I attempted a half-joke to mask my real anxiety. His eyes flashed with alarm. "No, of course not. You're not a prisoner. You are free to leave whenever you wish." But even as he said it, something pained flickered on his face at the thought. "However," he continued, "I strongly advise you stay at least until things are settled. My people can keep you safe here, and I would feel better knowing I can repay my debt by keeping you alive." I swallowed. Right, safety in the mob boss's mansion. Not how I pictured my week. I tried to smile, but it came out wobbly. Admitting it outright was a risk, but I had to. "You are a mob boss, right? Or something along those lines." He went very still, eyes locked on mine. A long pause, and then he inclined his head. "I am the head of my family, the Romano family." He said it quietly, but there was weight in those words. He was confirming my suspicion without glorifying it. I let out a breath I didn't know I held. Hearing him say it still made my stomach lurch a bit. I had just spent 24 hours in extremely close quarters with a Mafia Don, and now I was in his home, under his protection. It felt surreal and dangerous and, strangely, not as terrifying as it would have yesterday, because now I saw him as a person, one who bled and hurt, and even joked a little, rather than a faceless crime lord. But still, the reality loomed. This man likely ordered violence, lived in a brutal world. My conscience and my past screamed, warnings that my empathy for him was treading on thin ice. He must have mistaken my silence for fear, because he suddenly reached for my hand. His larger, warmer hand closed around mine on the bedspread. "Natalie, I never wanted you involved in this. You should never have had to see any of it. I know who you are, a brave, kind woman who was just in the wrong place, at the wrong time." A self-mocking smile touched his lips. "Or perhaps the right place for me, but wrong for you. If it's any comfort, I will do everything in my power to ensure Petrov cannot touch you. After that, you can walk away, and never have to think of me or this mess again." Something in my chest clenched at the idea of walking away and never seeing him again. I told myself it was just leftover adrenaline and the intensity of the situation. Of course I'd want to return to my normal life. Yet sitting here with his hand on mine, it already felt like a line had been crossed. Some tether connected us now, born of shared trauma and trust given in extremis. I doubted I could forget him so easily, but I forced a nod. "I appreciate that. And I trust you." Oddly, I added with a weak chuckle. "I probably shouldn't, but I do." His thumb unconsciously stroked the back of my hand. The gesture sent a little thrill through me, even as it comforted. "You saved my life without knowing a thing about me. That trust, that faith, I won't betray it." His voice was low, almost a vow. Our eyes locked, and for a charged moment, the air felt thick with something unspoken. I saw the ruggedly handsome man on the couch who had looked at me with pain and vulnerability, and also the commanding figure who had sent his men scurrying with a word. Both facets intrigued me more than I wanted to admit. My heart beat a touch faster. A knock on the doorframe shattered the moment. Enzo stood there, posture stiff. "Pardon, boss. A word when you're able." He flicked a glance at our joined hands, then carefully kept his eyes trained elsewhere. I flushed and gently withdrew from Luca's grip. Luca masked whatever he felt behind a neutral expression and beckoned Enzo in. "I'll go, let you talk," I whispered, suddenly self-conscious. But Luca held on to me a second longer before I could fully stand. "No, stay." He looked at Enzo. "Anything you can say? She can hear." I raised my eyebrows. Luca gave me a slight nod. Permission, or maybe a test of trust toward his man. Enzo didn't protest, though I could tell he wasn't thrilled. "It's about our leak," Enzo said grimly, voice lowered as if even here he feared being overheard. Marco traced a call from one of our burner phones to a number, known to be one of Petrov's men. It was made an hour before your convoy left the club last night. Luca's expression darkened. Who had that phone? Enzo hesitated, anger and hurt flickering in his eyes. It was in possession of Vinny. Luca inhaled sharply. I felt his hand tighten just a bit on mine reflexively. Vinny, he's been with my family since we were kids, he said softly, disbelief and betrayal coloring his tone. Enzo nodded. We picked him up. He's in the basement now, awake. By the coldness of that, I understood what that likely implied. They had detained this Vinny and were likely preparing to interrogate him. My stomach twisted. This was mafia business now, brutal and unforgiving. Part of me didn't want to know what they were going to do, but I also realized with a jolt, Vinny, a friend, had betrayed Luca, possibly tried to have him killed. I sneaked a glance at Luca's face. His features were schooled into a hard mask, but I saw the hurt in his eyes before he closed them a moment, steeling himself. When he opened them, they were icy. Take Diego and Marco. Get the truth out of him, Luca ordered quietly. But I want him alive until I speak to him myself. Enzo inclined his head. Understood. He turned on his heel and left as swiftly as he came. Silence fell between us. I could feel the anger radiating off Luca, though he remained outwardly calm. His free hand curled into a fist on the bed. I bit my lip, unsure if I should offer comfort or keep quiet. I couldn't imagine what it felt like to be betrayed by a childhood friend. Just thinking of my old friends. If any of them had ever... I shook the thought away. None of my experiences compared to this cutthroat world. Tentatively, I placed my other hand over his clenched one. I'm sorry, I said softly. I can't pretend to understand everything, but I'm sorry someone you trusted did that. His fist relaxed under my touch. He drew in a long breath, some of the steel in his posture softening as he focused on me again. So am I, he said, voice raw for a beat. I won't ask you to come with me to deal with him. In fact, I'd rather you not see that side of things. I nodded, both relieved and thankful. I didn't exactly relish witnessing an interrogation, possibly a violent one. I'll stay here, just be careful, okay? You literally just got out of surgery. That earned me a flicker of a smile. Worried about me already? I rolled my eyes for his benefit. You've been under my care, that tends to make me invested. Don't make all my hard work go to waste by ripping your stitches doing something macho. He actually chuckled at that, a low, genuine sound that made my heart skip. I'll do my best. Against what was probably better judgment, I helped him ease out of bed and into a standing position. He swayed and hissed at the pain but found his balance. He was in just sweatpants and an unbuttoned shirt, bandages wrapped around his middle. The proximity made me aware of the heat radiating from his bare skin and the lean strength beneath. I quickly stepped back once he was steady. A thought struck me as he prepared to go down to his men. Luca. I used his first name, which made him pause and meet my eyes. I tried not to think about how natural it felt to say it. That man, Petrov, he's the one who wanted you dead, right? He nodded slowly. I swallowed. You said I'd be safe here until things are settled. Does that mean you're going after him? Like war? I couldn't keep the tremor out of my voice. Mob war. Just the phrase conjured up images of blood on the streets. Drive-by shootings. Innocent people getting caught in crossfire. The same nightmare that took my father from me. His gaze hardened, but not at me. Petrov tried to eliminate me, and in doing so endangered an innocent, endangered you. I can't let that go unanswered. I heard the deadly resolve under his words. He would kill Petrov or die trying. I didn't doubt it. My chest tightened with an emotion I couldn't quite name. Fear for him, dread of more violence, and something like anguish, that this was the life he was trapped in. Just, be careful, I repeated lamely. Please. He reached out and brushed a thumb lightly along my cheek. The gesture stunned me into silence. For you, I will. His words were soft as a promise, and for a heartbeat I thought he might lean in and... But he pulled away, squaring his shoulders. His walls came back up, the dawn replacing the vulnerable man of moments ago. I realized he needed that armor to face what was next. I watched him leave, torn between worrying for what might happen below and a more personal worry blossoming in my heart, that I was growing far too attached to a man I should probably fear, and that when this was all over, I'd have an impossible choice to make. I waited anxiously in Luca's room as he went to confront Vinny in the basement. The house had fallen eerily quiet. I didn't know which was worse. Imagining what was happening to the traitor, or confronting how I felt about it. This was justice in Luca's world. Swift, brutal, and personal. Part of me believed Vinny deserved whatever came for trying to have his friend murdered. Yet another part, the part that was still my father's daughter, squirmed at the idea of violence meted out without due process. A muffled gunshot echoed from somewhere far below. I jumped, my heart leaping to my throat. In the stillness that followed, I felt cold all over. Had he just executed the traitor? A tremor went through me. I hated that I was sitting here passively imagining the worst. This is his life, I reminded myself. This is what happens in his life. When Luca finally returned, I rose to my feet uncertainly. One look at his face told me enough. His features were like carved stone, except for the flicker of pain in his eyes. There was a spatter of blood on the cuff of his shirt and rawness around his knuckles. He'd done it. One way or another, he'd dealt with Vinny. We stared at each other in heavy silence. I didn't know what to say. "Are you okay?" Seemed ridiculous. Of course he wasn't okay, even if he wouldn't admit it. He had just closed a chapter of betrayal with blood. "It's done," he said at last, voice subdued. He walked past me into the room as if suddenly bone-tired. Slowly he sank down on the edge of his bed. In that moment, despite the aura of danger and power he wore, he just looked weary. I approached tentatively and sat beside him. He didn't flinch when I took his hand, but he also didn't meet my eyes. A muscle ticked in his jaw. There was a small smear of blood on his cheek. Without thinking, I pulled a clean handkerchief from the bedside and gently wiped it away. He closed his eyes, letting me. "You don't have to say anything," he murmured after a moment. "If you fear me now, I understand." The neutrality of his tone couldn't hide the bitterness underneath. My chest clenched. Fear? Was I afraid of him? Maybe a little, in the sense that I was confronted by what he was capable of. But more than that, I was worried for him. He seemed to be carrying the weight of 1,000 hurts. "I don't fear you, Luca," I whispered. I'm still here. I'm not running." He opened his eyes then, steel blue meeting mine with cautious hope. "Even after seeing what I am? What I do?" I managed a sad smile. "I won't pretend I'm completely okay with it. Violence, losing people to it, it's personal for me." I took a breath, deciding to share the truth. My father was a police officer. He was killed in a gang shooting when I was a teenager. Luca inhaled sharply and turned fully toward me. "Natalie, I'm sorry. I didn't know." I nodded. "That's why I became a paramedic, I guess. Trying to save lives because his was taken." My voice wavered slightly. "So yeah, seeing all this, it's hard. It brings things back." I felt tears prickling and blinked them away. "But I also know you're not the one who hurt him, and I can see why you do what you do. These people you deal with, they don't follow laws. If you did, you'd be dead. I get it, even if it scares me." Gently, he reached up and brushed a tear from my cheek. I hadn't realized escaped. "You are remarkable," he said quietly. "After all you've been through, to still be here. To even try to understand me." He shook his head as if in awe. I sniffled, giving a half laugh. "I'm not sure I understand myself right now." I squeezed his hand. I don't want you to shut me out, okay? If I'm going to stay until this is over, I need you to be real with me. No sugarcoating what might happen. I can't handle being treated like I'm fragile or ignorant. I want to know what's going on." He considered that, then gave a single nod. "No secrets. You have my word." He hesitated, then continued softly. "And for what it's worth, if there were any way to live this life without the bloodshed, I would. But I was born into it, and after my father, the former boss, was killed, I had to take his place to protect everyone I cared about. It's ugly, but it's the only way I know to keep those I love safe. Those I love." The words hung between us. Did that group now include me, at least in some nascent way? My heart thumped painfully at the thought. Before I could dwell on it, a brisk knock came at the open door, making us both jump slightly. It was Marco, looking urgent. "Sorry, boss. We just got word. Petrov's safe house is empty. He's on the move," and he glanced at me, then back to Luca. "We intercepted some comms that suggest he knows about the lady." My blood ran cold. Luca stood at once, his grip on my hand tightening protectively. "What exactly was said?" Marco pressed his lips then. "He's desperate. Lost a lot of men in his first attempt, and now he knows we rooted out his insider. One of our contacts said Petrov was heard swearing. He'd make the girl pay for helping. You. He looked at me apologetically. He's furious you survived. Apparently one of his men saw someone pull you from the car. Must have been watching from a distance. I felt the color drain from my face. So they had known someone intervened. I shivered. Luca drew me slightly behind him, as if ready to shield me from threats even in our own home. Security? He barked to Marco. Already doubled around the grounds. But if Petrov is on the move, we fear he might attempt something soon, before we can strike him first. Marco's gaze flickered to me again. He might target her specifically, boss. Luca cursed under his breath in Italian. I want a detail on her at all times, he said. She doesn't leave the house. I didn't like the sound of that, feeling a small rebellious streak. But I also understood the seriousness. If Petrov wanted revenge, he'd likely stop at nothing. The idea of that man anywhere near me made my stomach churn. Marco nodded and withdrew to carry out orders. Luca turned to me, lifting my chin with a finger gently. I'll keep you safe, Natalie. The promise in his voice was fierce. I mustered a smile I didn't quite feel. I know. I'll be careful, I promise. He seemed reluctant to leave me even for a moment, but he needed to coordinate with his men. I assured him I'd stay either in his room or somewhere guarded. Sophia soon found me and insisted I eat some dinner to keep my strength up. I picked at the food, appetite lost to anxiety, but I appreciated her company and the normalcy it tried to provide. Night fell. The mansion was on high alert. I could feel the tension in the air. Armed guards patrolled outside. I glimpsed them from the window. Enzo and others came and went from the study, coordinating who knew what. Luca wanted to crush Petrov quickly, but they had to find him first. Part of me prayed they'd do it soon so this could be over. Another part dreaded the confrontation, knowing it meant more blood. By 10 p.m., Sophia gently ushered me back to my assigned bedroom, urging me to try to sleep. I'll stay with her. One of the guards, a younger man named Tommaso, volunteered, stationing himself outside my door. It was both reassuring and unnerving knowing a gunman stood sentinel for me. Sleep, however, didn't come. After tossing and turning for an hour, I gave up. My mind wouldn't stop churning through worst-case scenarios. The quiet was oppressive. I needed air. Peeking out, I saw Tommaso by the door, alert. He gave me a polite nod. All okay, signorina? Just need some fresh air, I whispered. Maybe just on the balcony? There was a balcony at the end of the hallway overlooking the back gardens. That was still within the secured grounds, I reasoned. He considered, then stepped aside to accompany me. The house was dim, most lights low. We reached the glass door to the balcony, and he scanned the outside before allowing me to step out. Cool night air kissed my face, along with the scent of jasmine from the garden below. The estate was vast and dark beyond the circle of lights near the house. Crickets chirped softly. For a moment, I closed my eyes and just breathed, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Tommaso lingered just inside the doorway, giving me a semblance of privacy while remaining close. I appreciated the gesture. Wrapping my arms around myself against the slight chill, I gazed at the stars peeking through the clouds. Strange to think only 2 nights ago. My biggest worry was an overtime shift or paying my rent. Now the world had flipped. Part of me felt strangely alive, like I'd found a purpose beyond the mundane routine. A connection with someone that felt significant. But it came at such a cost. A faint crunching sound drifted from the gardens below. My ears perked. Probably just a guard on patrol, I thought. I leaned over the railing slightly, peering down. I could make out a silhouette moving along the hedge line. A guard, surely. There was a perimeter fence beyond, but it was shadowed. Suddenly, the silhouette flickered, then disappeared. I frowned. That was odd. Perhaps he passed behind a tree, but then, there, a glint in the darkness, reflecting the house lights. It moved upward, aiming right at me. My heart seized. Get down! I screamed, whirling to warn Tommaso, but the words were cut off by the thunder of gunfire. A hail of silenced bullets tore through the night, thudding into flesh with sickening, muffled impacts. Tommaso jerked violently, multiple rounds striking him as he stood in the doorway. His eyes went wide in shock as he collapsed. I stood paralyzed for a split second, disbelief and horror washing over me. Then survival instinct kicked in, and I threw myself flat to the balcony floor, crawling desperately toward Tommaso's fallen form and the door. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip him. "Tommaso!" I gasped. He didn't respond, blood pooling under him. The door had swung half-closed beside him. I reached for it, intending to drag us both back inside, when rough hands suddenly grabbed me from behind. I shrieked, kicking, but another hand clamped over my mouth. A man had hoisted himself up onto the balcony from the outside, rope dangling behind him. How had he gotten past the fence? My mind reeled even as I thrashed. He was strong and dressed in black tactical gear, face smeared with camouflage. I bit down hard on the palm over my mouth. He swore and loosened his grip enough for me to twist and scream at the top of my lungs. "Luca!" Before he yanked me back, pain exploded in the side of my head as he slammed me against the wall. My vision sparked. Dizzy, I still fought wildly, clawing at whatever I could reach. The man cursed in Russian. This had to be Petrov's crew. Through the ringing in my ears, I dimly heard shouts from inside the house. My scream had raised alarm, but it might be too late. The attacker looped an arm around my throat, trying to subdue me. Stars danced in my vision from lack of air. Desperate, I reached up and raked my nails across his eyes. He bellowed and instinctively let go to shield his face. I broke free, gasping, and half crawled, half stumbled toward the door. Another dark figure vaulted over the railing. 2 of them. I was snared by the second man before I could reach the threshold. This one seized my wrist and twisted it behind my back, eliciting a cry of pain. In seconds, he had me pinned. The first man, eyes inflamed from my scratching, grabbed my face brutally. "Keep her quiet," he spat in Russian. The other clamped his hand over my mouth again, and I tasted blood, where I'd bitten him earlier. In a swift motion, they bound my wrists with some zip tie and hauled me up. I dug my heels in, trying to deadweight myself, but one lifted me fully over his shoulder. My ribs protested the hard contact, and I wheezed, still dizzy. Over his back, I saw several more shadows moving by the fence. This was a coordinated snatch team. My heart sank. They began descending a rope ladder they'd fixed to the balcony. It was insane. But they were doing it, trying to abduct me right out from under Luca's nose. I kicked and writhed, doing everything to throw off the man's balance. A gunshot rang out below us, and the man carrying me jerked abruptly. We swung crazily. He cursed. Someone had fired at him. Did that mean backup was here? Another shot, and I heard a pained yell from above. It sounded like one of the attackers. Return fire erupted, bullets zinging through the night. Suddenly, the man holding me released his grip. Maybe he was hit? And I was falling. I hit the ground hard, knocking the wind out of me. Thankfully, it was only about a 10-foot drop. We'd gotten partially down. My shoulder screamed in pain from landing badly. Mercifully, the ground was soft soil of a flower bed rather than stone. I struggled, ears still ringing, vision blurry. Thankfully, the zip tie around my wrists had snapped on impact. Or been cut by something. I realized one of the men had been carrying a knife that fell near me. I tugged my arms free, wincing at the ache. Around me was chaos, muzzle flashes, shouting in 2 languages. I crawled behind a stone bird bath in the garden, struggling to catch my breath and make sense of the scene. By faint moonlight and the intermittent flash of gunfire, I saw several of Luca's guards engaged with Petrov's men near the back fence. It was an all-out firefight. One of Petrov's crew lay unmoving nearby, possibly the one that dropped me. I spotted the second kidnapper limping toward the fence where a gap had been blown open. He seemed to be retreating. They hadn't planned for a prolonged fight. They'd wanted a quick snatch and dash. Then I saw another figure, tall and commanding, emerge from the house, Luca. He moved with predatory grace, gun raised. Even injured, he was joining the fray. My heart lurched in both relief and fear for him. "Luca!" I tried to call out, but my voice was weak from choking in panic. I'm not sure he heard me over the gunfire. One of Petrov's gunmen noticed Luca and opened fire. Luca rolled behind a planter, returning shots with deadly precision. In the dimness, I saw one of his bullets catch the shooter, who went down. Another assailant tried to flank him. Luca stepped out boldly, firing twice. The man crumpled. For a moment, I was struck by the sheer command he wielded in combat. Focused, fearless. He truly was a force to be reckoned with. But it wasn't over. A harsh voice rang out from near the breach in the fence. "Romano!" The accent was unmistakably Russian. A broad-shouldered man with a shaved head was standing just beyond the fence, holding something in one hand. At first I thought it was another gun, but then I saw the shape. It was a detonator. He had explosives? The fighting around had lulled. It seemed most of Petrov's crew were neutralized except this one. Luca trained his pistol on the man immediately. "Drop it, Petrov," Luka commanded, confirming the man's identity. Petrov barked a laugh. You kill my men, ruin my plans. Think I come unprepared, huh? He held up the detonator higher. I push, whole van goes boom. Girl dies anyway. My blood froze. Van. Was I already supposed to be in a van wired to blow? Or did he mean another explosive nearby? Luka's stance wavered not an inch. You're bluffing, he said coldly, though his eyes flickered toward the yard, likely calculating if any hidden trap existed. You willing to bet her life? Petrov sneered. To my horror, he then revealed he did have a gun in his other hand, pointing not at Luka, but vaguely in my direction. He didn't seem to know exactly where I was. But if he sprayed bullets, I could be hit, and I was effectively cornered behind this stone bath. One stray bullet. Luka stepped forward slightly, drawing Petrov's aim back to himself. I'm the one you want, Petrov. She's nothing to do with this. Just an innocent. An innocent who cost me everything, Petrov spat. If not for her, you'd be dead and I'd be dividing up your empire, right? Now. His face was twisted in rage, visible even in near dark. So yes, I will enjoy killing her. But first I'll watch you break. He turned the gun fully toward Luka, and I realized with dread that he intended to shoot Luka and then likely come finish me. Luka was out in the open, too far from cover. Everything happened in a split second. Petrov's finger tightened on the trigger. I launched from my hiding spot and ran toward Luka. No! I screamed. Petrov swiveled at the sudden movement, just as I crashed into Luka's side with all my might. A gunshot cracked. I felt a searing line of fire graze my upper arm as we both went, down behind a low retaining wall. I gasped but kept my wits. My arm burned, but it was just a stripe of pain, not a deep wound. Luka wrapped himself around me as we landed, instinctively shielding me. We hit the ground hard. Immediately, Luka was trying to push me further behind the wall, protecting me with his body. Are you hit? He panted, eyes wild as his hands frantically patted over me for injuries. I'm okay, I managed, though my arm throbbed and warm wetness trickled down. Just grazed. Relief flashed in his eyes, followed by fury. He pulled me tight against the wall and peeked over cautiously. Petrov was advancing, believing he'd struck one of us properly, perhaps. Luka grimaced. I could tell he was torn between staying with me and confronting Petrov. In that heartbeat, I knew what I had to do. My eyes fell on the pistol of one of Petrov's fallen men just a foot or two from our position, likely dropped when Luka shot him earlier. I wiggled out of Luka's grasp before he realized, and lunged for it. My freed hands made it clumsy, but I scooped it up and spun around, kneeling. Natalie, no! Luka yelled, reaching to pull me back. But I had already raised the weapon, aiming over the wall at the figure coming closer. My hands shook badly, but Petrov was only about 15 yards away, stepping through the break in the fence with murder in his eyes. I squeezed the trigger once, twice, 3 times, just as Luka's arm came around me trying to drag me down. The recoil jarred my arms painfully, and for an agonizing second I thought I'd missed. But then Petrov stumbled, one shot catching him in the shoulder. The next hit center mass. His gun fired wildly into the air as he fell backward onto the grass. Outside the fence, everything was suddenly silent, except my own ragged breathing. I stared, stunned at what I'd done. Petrov lay motionless. My fingers went limp, the pistol dropping to the ground. Luka pulled me back behind the wall fully, his face a mix of shock and fierce pride. Jesus, Natalie. He cupped my face, eyes sweeping over me as if to confirm I was indeed all right. I felt numb, adrenaline still roaring in my ears. You saved... His words cut off in a strangled sound. Only then did I notice my shirt was wet with more than just my own blood. In the faint light, a dark crimson stain spread across Luka's side. My heart stopped. No, I whimpered, pressing my hand to his torso. There was blood, fresh and warm, seeping between my fingers. He'd been hit when Petrov fired as I tackled him. Luka swayed, his face going ashen. It's nothing, he tried to say, but the way he winced betrayed him. Panic and anguish surged through me. Help! We need help here! I screamed toward the house. I ripped at his shirt, desperate to see the wound. It looked like the bullet hit near where he'd been injured before. The bandages were soaked red. You idiot, I cried, tears blurring my vision. You were barely healed. He gave a weak chuckle that turned into a cough. I promised to be careful, he murmured, lips red with a bit of blood. I didn't promise to be lucky. Stop joking, I sobbed. pressing harder to stem the bleeding. Where were the medics? I could hear running footsteps now. Luca's men finally catching up. Stay with me, Luca, please. His hand grasped my arm, the uninjured one smearing it with his blood. Natalie, don't cry. His voice was faint but urgent. I need to tell you. If I don't make it, you're going to make it. I nearly shouted, voice breaking. I refused to believe otherwise. Just hold on. His fingers squeezed. If I don't, I have a letter. In my desk, he gasped, struggling for breath. But I'd rather say it now. I shook my head, tears falling freely. Save your strength. He lifted a trembling hand to my cheek, a familiar gesture now charged with desperation. I was dead inside before I met you, he whispered. Running on revenge and duty. Then you? You pulled me out of that wreck and gave me a reason to fight. To live. His eyes were intense, pleading for me to hear him. I love you, Natalie. A sob caught in my throat. Luca. My heart felt like it was splitting. How could hearing those words feel both like soaring and dying at the same time? I leaned down, pressing my forehead to his. I love you too, I choked out. It was true. In this life or death moment, nothing was clearer. So you damn well have to live, do you understand? I'm not losing you now. He closed his eyes, a tear slipping from one corner. Or maybe it was mine. As you wish, he breathed, the ghost of a smile on his lips. Then strong arms were pulling me back. Enzo was there, another man with him. They had field dressings ready, and one gently moved me aside to get to Luca. Boss, hang in there, Enzo was saying, ripping open Luca's shirt to assess the wound. He snapped orders to someone to call the doctor. An ambulance be damned. The world became a flurry of activity, guards shouting, others confirming Petrov was down, secure. I knelt nearby, my hands covered in Luca's blood. Shaking so violently I thought I'd collapse. Sophia appeared at my side, wrapping an arm around me. She was crying too, whispering prayers in Italian. I clung to her as Luca was stabilized and carefully lifted. He had passed out, head lolling. I stood on unsteady legs and followed as they carried him inside. The next hours were a blur. Dr. Sullivan arrived in record time and they whisked Luca to a makeshift operating room in the mansion. Who had an operating room ready? Mafia bosses, apparently. I was not allowed inside. I spent the time pacing the hallway, refusing to sit or rest despite everyone's urging. My arm had been properly bandaged, just a flesh wound, they said, but I barely remembered getting it treated. All I could think of was Luca on that table, fighting for his life again. Twice now I had almost lost him. That realization alone made clear just how deeply he had embedded himself in my heart in such a short span. Just before dawn, Dr. Sullivan finally emerged, looking exhausted but giving a small nod. He'll pull through, he said. The bullet missed the vital organs, luckily. We repaired the damage. He needs real rest this time, and no running around for a while. He gave me a pointed but kind look. He's asking for you, briefly. My knees nearly gave out in relief. I murmured a thank you and rushed past into the room. There he was, pale but alive, swathed in bandages. An IV drip hung by the bed, and monitors beeped softly. Luca turned his head at my approach, a slow smile curling his lips despite how weak he looked. My angel, he whispered, voice hoarse. I gently took his hand, tears of joy pricking my eyes. I'm here, I managed, bringing his hand to my lips. You're stuck with me, I'm afraid. His thumb brushed my knuckles lightly. Music to my ears. He drew a shaky breath. Petrov? Dead, I confirmed, squeezing his hand. I shot him. Actually, I'm pretty sure I did. The reality of that was only just sinking in now that adrenaline had faded. I had killed a man, albeit a very evil man. My stomach twisted, but I would grapple with that later. A flicker of something like regret crossed Luca's face. I'm sorry you had to do that. He was going to kill you. Kill us, I said softly, voice fierce. I'd do it again. He nodded, eyes shining with pride and affection. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Despite everything, I let out a breath of laughter. We shared a tender silence then. My gaze roamed his face, memorizing every line and contour just to reassure myself he was still here. He looked back at me with such warmth that I felt myself blush. I'm going to hold you to your promise. You know? I murmured, breaking the quiet. Which one? Not dying on me. My voice wavered, even as I tried to lighten it. You scared me half to death." He brought my hand to his heart, pressing it there. I felt the steady thump-thump beneath the bandages, and it was the most beautiful sound in the world. "This heart is yours now," he said softly. "I'm not going anywhere." I blinked away tears. There it was, the new truth of our lives. We belong to each other, for better or worse. "And mine is yours," I whispered. A tired but content smile touched his lips. With a gentle tug, he guided me to sit on the edge of the bed. Despite the IV and pain, he shifted to make space, clearly wanting me close. I carefully lay beside him on top of the covers, resting my head on his shoulder, mindful of his injuries. His arms settled around me. We were both battered, but in that moment, safe. "There's so much to figure out," I said after a while, my fingers idly tracing a shape on his gown. "Your life, my life, how this fits." He tilted his head to kiss my forehead. "One step at a time. We have that luxury now, thanks to you." There was a quiet reverence in his tone. "Whatever you want, we'll make it work. If you want to go back to your normal life, I'll ensure you're protected always. If you want to be with me, then you will have a place by my side and freedom to be yourself. I would never cage you." I breathed him in, this complicated man who had changed my world. "I don't want to be apart," I admitted. "But I also can't just abandon who I am. My job, helping people, it's part of me." "I know," he murmured. "I wouldn't dream of asking you to give that up." I raised myself on my elbow to look at him directly. "And I need honesty from you. All of it. If I'm in, I'm all in. No lies." His eyes grew solemn. "You'll know everything. No secrets. Though I warn you, some of it isn't pretty." I managed a small smile. "I think I can handle ugly, given what we've just been through." He chuckled softly, then winced at the movement. I helped ease him back, and for a moment, just brushed a lock of dark hair off his forehead tenderly. "What about you?" I asked. "What do you want, truly? If you tell me it's too dangerous and you'd rather send me away?" My throat closed at the thought. But he shook his head. "No, I meant what I said. I love you. I want you with me, however you'll have me." He paused, a shadow of uncertainty crossing his face. "I know I can't give you a normal life, but I swear I'll do everything to give you a happy life and a safe one. And maybe, in time, I can find a way out of the worst of this world. Reshape it into something that doesn't touch us." Hearing that made my heart swell. It was perhaps an impossible dream, but the fact he would even consider changing his life for me spoke volumes. I leaned down and kissed him softly, tasting the salt of both our tears. "We'll figure it out together," I whispered against his lips. He sighed contentedly as we broke apart, resting his forehead against mine. "Together," he echoed. Outside the window, the first hues of dawn were lighting the horizon. A new day, a new beginning for both of us. I thought back to the fateful night when I had first seen that burning car on the road. It felt like a lifetime ago and just yesterday all at once. In saving this man, I'd found something I'd lost faith in. Love, passion, a sense of belonging. Life with Luca would never be simple or completely safe, but strangely I felt more alive than I ever had in my quiet routine before. As the sky brightened, I remained curled at Luca's side, listening to the steady beat of his heart. My mafia boss, my savior as much as I was his. We had saved each other from the flames, in more ways than one. And now, whatever the future held, we would face it hand in hand. He gently tilted my chin up so our eyes met one more time. "Thank you for not letting go of me," he said. I smiled through the tears that seemed perpetual. That night, tears of relief and joy now. "Thank you for finding me in the dark." His fingers intertwined with mine, a perfect fit. "Ti amo," he whispered in Italian, eyes shining. I didn't need a translation. "Ti amo, Luca," I replied softly. His answering smile was like the sun coming out. And as he closed his eyes to finally rest, I stayed awake a little longer, watching over him. Just as I had on that first night, I kept vigil, only this time with the certainty that when he woke, it would be the start of something precious and new. A future we would forge together, born from fire and fate, stronger than all the dangers we left behind. Together,